In the software industry, um, billions of dollars are just vaporized every single year.
Yeah, it's a staggering amount of money.
Right. And the wildest part is that those billions aren't usually lost because a team built, like, a bad product.
No, they are lost because these highly talented, incredibly efficient teams flawlessly built the completely wrong product.
Exactly. So today we are looking at that exact pivotal moment in a project's life cycle where a team either sets themselves up to, change their industry, or they inadvertently doom themselves to the software graveyard.
It is a phenomenal hidden cost. I mean, we are talking about the crucial space between a fuzzy, ambitious concept and a tangible, buildable product. It's the space where momentum usually just hits a brick wall.
And if you're listening, whether you manage a dev team or even if you are just trying to launch your own side hustle, you have probably stared down this exact barrel.
Oh, definitely.
You have the ambition, you have the whiteboards totally filled with ideas, but when Monday morning rolls around and you sit down to execute, everything grinds to a halt.
Yeah, you start asking, wait, what do we actually build first?
Right. Or is this even technically possible with our current legacy systems? And suddenly that pristine idea becomes this tangled mess of conflicting opinions.
Which is exactly why today's source material is so vital.
Yes. So today's deep dive is pulling from an incredibly practical article titled Pre-Study and Practice, From Idea to Buildable MVP.
By Tobias Reidenhag, right?
Yep, Tobias Reidenhag. He's the head of design at Intunio, which is a UX design and development studio based in Gothenburg, Sweden.
Such a great piece.
It really is. And our mission today is to completely deconstruct Intunio's exact blueprint for what they call the pre-study. It's the phase that must happen before a single line of code is written.
Because the text points out a hard truth right out of the gate, Ambition doesn't write code.
No, it doesn't.
And it certainly doesn't design interfaces. What is usually missing at the start of any major initiative are the answers to the hard, practical questions.
Like what is technically realistic?
Exactly. Or what long-term architectural decisions need to be made today so we don't, paint ourselves into a corner 6 months from now.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before you can build anything, you have to figure out exactly where you were starting from.
Right.
And I think there is this romanticized notion in the tech and business worlds that innovation starts with a blank whiteboard. Like, you just put your smartest people in an empty room, give them some markers, and let pure imagination take over.
It is a deeply ingrained myth, but the text is explicit about how false it actually is.
So false.
A pre-study rarely, if ever, starts from a truly blank page. By the time a team actually sits down to kick off a project, that conference room is already suffocatingly crowded with invisible baggage.
I love that term, invisible baggage. Let's make that concrete for the listener. What kind of baggage are people actually dragging into this room?
Well, think about the different departments involved, right? You have existing business goals. Maybe the sales team has already promised a specific ROI for this quarter.
Oh yeah, the pressure's already on.
Exactly. You have deeply held, often totally untested hypotheses about what the user actually wants. And perhaps most dangerously, people bring very strong, pre-existing opinions about the solutions themselves.
Like they already know what they want to build before they even know the problem.
Precisely. An executive might already be stubbornly attached to a specific software platform, or a developer might be eager to use, like, a trending new framework. And this is well before the core problem has even been properly defined.
It makes me think of planning a massive group road trip. You tell 5 friends, hey, let's drive across the country.
That is the shared ambition.
Right. But when everyone shows up on day 1, you realize everyone brought their own secret map. Like one person packs surfboards and assumes you're heading to the coast.
Oh, and another person brought snow chains and thinks you're going to the mountains?
Exactly. And the person actually driving just assumes you're taking their ancient, unreliable van.
Right. Everyone has a different destination.
And a different method of getting there. But nobody actually talked about it out loud because the ambition felt so unified.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the friction. Because if you just step on the gas in that scenario without reconciling those secret maps, you are heading straight for a breakdown.
But let me push back on this a little bit. Because in the real business world, time is literally money.
True.
If I'm paying a team of highly specialized engineers and designers, hundreds of dollars an hour, and they already have strong opinions on what the solution should be, shouldn't we just start building?
You mean just get moving?
Yeah. Let's get the van on the road, start coding, and figure it out as we go to save time. Why artificially stop everything to do a pre-study?
What's fascinating here is that jumping straight into the solution is mathematically the most expensive mistake a company can make.
Wow, really?
Yes, the Intunio method insists that the very first step of a pre-study is intentionally and aggressively not about locking in solutions. If you lock in a solution before you understand the underlying problem, you might spend 6 months efficiently building a flawless product that nobody actually wants or needs.
Ah, so you arrive at the beach in record time, but everyone in the car actually wanted to go skiing.
Exactly the point. The efficiency of the journey doesn't matter if the destination is wrong.
Right.
So to prevent this, Intunio forces design, engineering, and business stakeholders into collaborative workshops early on. The goal isn't to start drawing interfaces. The goal is to force everyone to put those secret maps face up on the table.
So how does that actually work in practice? Like if an executive says, our users want a gamified points system, how do you separate the fact from the assumption in a workshop setting?
You map it out physically or digitally. You take that statement and you literally ask the room, do we have data proving this? Have we interviewed users who asked for this?
And if they haven't?
If the answer is no, it goes into the assumption bucket. It doesn't mean it's a bad idea, but it highlights a risk. It reveals what you don't actually know. The true goal of this first phase is to create a shared problem definition, identify those massive risks, and set high-level boundaries of what is reasonable to take forward.
You have to agree on the reality of the situation before you try to change it.
Exactly.
Okay, so the map is on the table. We've agreed we are going to the mountains.
Yeah.
And we've agreed we aren't taking the unreliable van. We finally have a shared problem.
Right.
But a problem definition is still incredibly abstract.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just words on a whiteboard. Knowing the destination doesn't mean we know what kind of vehicle to build.
That's the trap.
Yeah, this introduces a dangerous temptation, right? To start painting the car before we built the engine. How does Intunio start visualizing this thing without slipping back into that trap of locking in a premature solution?
Well, this is the critical pivot from alignment to exploration. And this is where design steps into the spotlight, but specifically not in the way most tech companies utilize it.
How
They aren't creating polished, pixel-perfect final designs. They're creating very, very raw sketches.
There's a specific phrase from the text that I highlighted heavily. Intunio calls these early design sketches a shared discussion artifact.
Such a great concept.
It really is. For you listening, think about how this applies to whatever system you are managing. When you only use words, people's brains fill in the blanks differently. My idea of a simple interface might be your idea of a cluttered nightmare.
Right, because words are subjective.
Exactly. But the second you put a visual artifact in the middle of the table, even if it's just a crude Sharpie drawing on a napkin, it immediately anchors the conversation.
It forces specificity. You can't hide behind buzzwords when there is a literal sketch in front of you.
But why a rough sketch? Why not use one of the amazing design tools we have today to create a beautiful high-fidelity mock-up? Like if you want to impress the stakeholders, wouldn't a polished design be better?
You'd think so. But we have to look at the psychology of user testing and stakeholder feedback to understand why high fidelity is actually detrimental at this stage.
Detrimental. Yeah.
When you show a client or a user a highly polished design, their brain processes it as done. Psychologically, people are very hesitant to criticize something that looks finished.
Oh, that makes sense.
Or worse, they get completely distracted by trivial details. They will spend 30 minutes arguing about why the submit button is a specific shade of blue instead of noticing that the core checkout flow is fundamentally broken.
Right. They're critiquing the paint job when the car doesn't even have a steering wheel.
Precisely. A sketch, however, is inherently unfinished. It looks like a draft.
Yeah.
It makes the idea concrete enough to understand the mechanics, but rough enough that people feel entirely comfortable critiquing it, crossing things out, or throwing it away entirely.
So it's about giving them permission to break it.
Exactly. Intunio uses these sketches to visualize central flows and facilitate dialogue. It is a highly efficient way to test ideas and figure out what actually works before committing heavy, expensive development resources to it.
I see the value there, absolutely. But here is where we hit a massive layer of complexity.
Oh, definitely.
A sketch is a phenomenal discussion piece. It gets everyone on the same page visually. But a sketch drawn on a whiteboard doesn't have to obey the laws of physics.
No, it doesn't.
Or in the context of digital products, a sketch doesn't have to obey the limitations of your current technology stack.
And that is the ultimate danger of isolated design. Designing in a vacuum without engineering input just creates beautiful fictions.
I think of it like an architect designing this stunning, award-winning blueprint for a sprawling airport terminal, but they completely forget to ask the geologists if the ground underneath can support jetliners.
Yeah, it looks gorgeous on paper.
The stakeholders love the shared discussion artifact, right?
Right.
But a 747 actually lands, the whole runway just sinks right into a swamp.
Which is why the Intunio text firmly states that a pre-study is utterly incomplete without early, rigorous, and parallel discussions around technology choices and architecture.
Parallel being the operative word there.
Exactly. Parallel.
So while the designers are sketching the terminal, the engineers are literally in the same room calculating the soil density. How does that interaction actually play out in a tech setting? How do engineers stress test a sketch that doesn't even have code attached to it yet?
Let's use a tangible example. Imagine a designer sketches a single, simple dashboard screen. On that screen, there is a drop-down menu that supposedly allows a user to instantly pull up 10 years of their financial transaction history, fully categorized.
It sounds simple enough.
Right. To the designer and the user, it's just a simple box on a piece of paper. But the senior back-end engineer looking at that same sketch immediately runs a mental query.
The engineer sees the invisible swamp.
Yes, the engineer knows that their company's current legacy API takes 4 seconds just to fetch 1 year of data.
Oh, wow.
So fetching 10 years instantly would just crash the system. That simple sketch suddenly requires a massive, complex data caching layer that the company doesn't currently possess.
That's wild.
That is the mechanism of the parallel track. The sketch triggers the architectural stress test. Intunio is weighing fundamental approaches right then and there.
Like, are we building a web app or a native mobile app?
Exactly. How are we handling back-end integrations with these clunky legacy systems? They are actively identifying technical dependencies before a single interface is finalized.
Which is so different from how it normally works. In a lot of traditional, like, waterfall-style companies, design and tech are treated as completely sequential, isolated steps.
Oh, it's a classic problem.
Design makes it look pretty over a few months, then they essentially throw it over a brick wall to the developers and say, make this work.
And the developers look at it and say, this is functionally impossible within our budget.
Exactly. So they either have to spend millions trying to build the impossible, or they have to hack the design to pieces, resulting in an experience the user completely hates.
Right.
By marrying design and tech in the pre-study, you are ensuring the user experience and the technical foundation are locked in a symbiotic relationship, not a combative one.
You avoid the 2 massive risks of software development. First, the risk of creating a beautiful UI that is an absolute nightmare to maintain because the backend had to be duct-taped together to support it.
And the second risk.
The inverse risk, making rigid technical choices early on that severely cripple the user experience down the line. I mean, you might build a perfectly robust back-end database, but if it forces the user to click through 10 confusing screens just to accomplish a simple task, you've still failed.
Wow. So let's take a breath and look at where we are in this pre-study journey.
Correct.
We've survived the workshop phase and created a shared problem definition. We unpack the invisible baggage. We have visual artifacts, these rough sketches that anchor our conversations and prevent us from arguing about button colors.
Yep, the foundation is set.
And we have a grounded technical reality. Our engineers have stress-tested the sketches, so we know we aren't building an airport on a swamp. We're feeling incredibly confident. But now comes what might actually be the most brutal part of the entire process scoping.
Ah, yes. Deciding what actually makes the cut.
Right. Shaping the very first buildable version of the product, the MVP.
This is where teams usually tear each other apart.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. Because if you were listening to this, you hear the acronym MVP, Minimum Viable Product, and you probably immediately think of Eric Ries and the lean startup methodology.
Sure, that's a standard association.
You think cheap. You think duct tape, scrappy, bare bones, get the ugliest possible version out the door just to see if anyone clicks on it.
Right.
But Intunio drops a massive paradigm shift here. They completely challenge that baseline assumption. The text explicitly states that an MVP is not about building as little as possible.
That redefinition is the fulcrum of their entire process.
They define the MVP as building the right things in the right order. It's not about minimizing effort or writing the least amount of code. It is entirely about sequencing an architectural foundation. It's load-bearing,
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can see how radically this changes the psychology of a product team.
How so?
In a standard corporate project, when an idea or a feature gets cut from the initial launch, people panic. Stakeholders feel like their pet feature has been killed, so they fight tooth and nail to shove everything into version 1. And that just results in a bloated, broken mess.
Because in their minds, if it's not in the MVP, it's dead forever.
Right. But under Intunio's definition, deprioritizing a feature doesn't mean it lacks value or that it's dead. It simply means it isn't the foundational prerequisite for step 1.
That makes so much sense.
Let's go back to your airport analogy. Deprioritizing the luxury VIP lounge doesn't mean the lounge is a bad idea. It means you have to pour the concrete for the runway first, otherwise nobody can land to use the lounge anyway.
I love that. It changes a harsh no into a strategic not right now.
And because the team established that shared understanding and surfaced those technical realities in the earlier phases, they can actually agree objectively on what step 1 needs to be.
Because the secret maps are already on the table.
Exactly. The MVP has to be built on a technical foundation that natively supports continued development. It is not a disposable, throwaway prototype. It is the permanent bedrock of the future product.
Which fundamentally changes the morale of the development team. I mean, they aren't just hacking something together over a weekend that they secretly know they will have to tear down and rewrite in 6 months when the app scales.
No, not at all.
They are building a solid, scalable architecture from day one, just with a limited feature set.
The outcome of this scoping phase is a highly focused, heavily negotiated set of parameters. Both the design team and the development team now have a scope they can confidently work from, completely devoid of the usual guesswork.
Okay, so the pre-study officially wraps up. The team has gone through alignment. They've done their sketch exploration. They have grounded everything in technical reality, and they have scoped a sequential MVP.
They've done the hard work.
What do you actually have in your hands when the dust settles? Because you don't just get a pat on the back and a good feeling.
Not at all. The deliverables from this phase are incredibly concrete.
Looking directly at the text, you walk away with 4 distinct pillars. First, a clearly scoped MVP. A definitive list of exactly what you're building first, and just as importantly, what you are saving for later.
Yep, the sequence.
Second, you have those design sketches for the central, most critical user flows. Third, you have solid technical recommendations and architectural decisions, like the database structures and API requirements are known.
Crucial for moving forward.
And fourth, which is music to any executive's ears, you have realistic, well-grounded estimates of scope and effort. You actually know, with a high degree of confidence, what this is going to cost in time and money.
But the text adds a very necessary caveat to those deliverables. They are a shared starting point. They are not absolute guarantees of the future.
Because even the best pre-study can't predict every single hurdle, right?
Right. A pre-study systematically reduces uncertainty, but it doesn't grant you clairvoyance. Crucially, the outcome of a pre-study isn't always a green light to go full steam ahead.
Oh, that's interesting.
Sometimes the project moves seamlessly into active development, armed with this incredible preparation. But in other scenarios, the pre-study forces a deliberate, calculated decision to drastically adjust the direction, or even to wait.
Like to hit the brakes entirely and kill the project.
Yes. And we need to recognize how valuable that brake pedal is. Figuring out that an idea is technically unfeasible or that the required back-end work will cost triple the initial budget before you hire a massive dev team to start coding.
That's a huge win.
It's a massive victory. The pre-study served its exact purpose. It saved the company from a slow, expensive disaster.
So what does this all mean for you and whatever project you're trying to get off the ground? The text leaves us with this profound idea that an MVP is a beginning, not a destination.
It sets the stage for everything.
It really does. That very first version, and the pre-study that defines it, sets the organizational tone for everything that follows. It establishes how your designers and engineers communicate, how you navigate compromise, and how you view long-term architecture.
It literally establishes the cultural and technical DNA of the product.
And that brings us right back to the brick wall we talked about at the very beginning of this deep dive. The paralyzing frustration of having a brilliant idea but failing to execute it.
It all comes back to that.
It leaves you with something to really mull over as you look at your own workflows. If a pre-study fundamentally sets the organizational DNA for the entire lifespan of a product, I mean, how much time, how much money, and how much irreplaceable team morale is secretly being drained from companies every single day, simply because they skip the pre-study and arrogantly rush straight into building.